So now here's some special case that you have in certain regions, which is called a salt plug estuary. So a salt plug estuary are characterized by a zone which has a hypersaline environment, lower salinity on both sides. You can see this is what we call a plug of high salinity water. So now how can you explain it? Well, you have to mention that you have an inverse estuary. So this is the overall setting as an inverse estuary, where you have a flow towards the ocean in the bottom layer, and this is shown here on the right half. Flow of hypersaline water to the ocean near the bottom, inflow near the surface. On the other hand, at the same time, you have a rainfall event and you have a river, low salinity river outflow event, which creates a positive estuary. So this positive estuary and the inverse estuary creates the salt plug. And that's now a specific zone which has which has a concentrated hypersaline water mass sitting there. It's a very, very fascinating feature. So now just two comments. Comment number one, illustrated here, but I'm not going through all the details. If you have quite narrow rivers, the flows are mainly vertical, in a sense like you have an outflow in the top layer and an inflow in the bottom layer. If you have a little bit wider estuaries, you get an influence from the Coriolis force such that the inflow is shifted to one side of the estuary and the outflow to the other side. So in even wider entrances or wider systems, you can even have the situation where the outflow is on one side and the inflow is on the opposite. And this is about the Coriolis effects that you can have. The second note is you can have intermittent estuaries. I'll show you some examples in the next lecture. It's about systems that only exist during times of rainfall, during rainfall season. And if you don't have rainfall, then it actually turns into a passive, we call it embayment, an oceanic embayment. So they're only activated after rainfall events. Okay, and then it can go through transitions. It can be a salt wedge developing into a highly or slightly stratified and then vertically mixed systems. So these are very fascinating systems, in particular if you look at the ecology, okay, because they have sort of dormant systems that are asleep until you have a rainfall event. Again, in particular if you have many years of droughts and then all of a sudden you have a flooding event. So this is very fascinating to study. These are called intermittent estuaries. Okay.